Hey, it's Vicky, and today I'm here to talk about the books I read in January. It was kind of a slower month. I didn't finish my first book of the month until halfway through the month, so it was just sort of a slow go. I think I was just adjusting to my new schedule with school and everything, and a lot of the books I read were more slow burns, I think, so that also may have affected it, but I did end up reading 6 things. I read 3 print books, 1 ebook, and 2 audiobooks, and no DNFs, so that's good. So yeah, let's dive into the wrap-up. So my very first read for 2024 was a book that I actually read for my 100 Epic Reads project, and that was The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. So I did a whole video about this book already, so I'm not going to go into too much detail other than to say I had sort of mixed feelings about this book, and I ended up giving it a 3.5 star rating. So if you want my full thoughts on that, go ahead and check out that vlog. The next book that I read in January was a horror anthology, and I chose this book because I was looking for a book to read for the Buzzword Reading Challenge. And the challenge was to read a book with the word there, or there, you know, the 3 theres in the title. So I read Out There Screaming, and like I said, this was an anthology that was edited by Jordan Peele, who is a director that I enjoy. I enjoy his movies. And this one, it was, I can't remember exactly how many stories there were. I want to say there were 19 or 20 of them, all by Black authors. And so I think that overall as a collection, I think it did a good job of sort of mixing horror elements and, you know, weird stories, creepy stories, sci-fi stories, you know, the sort of whole spectrum of like what you can expect in horror with the Black experience. And so I appreciated that. Unfortunately, this collection didn't have any 5-star stories from me. But there were a few 4 stars. The ones that stuck out to me the most were Invasion of the Baby Snatchers, which was kind of a sci-fi story. The Most Strongest, Obey a Woman of the World, which I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. A Bird Sings by the Etching Tree, and then Hide and Seek. Hide and Seek was probably, those were all the 4-star stories that I had, and Hide and Seek was probably my favorite of the 4 stars. So that was probably my favorite story of the collection. It dealt with 2 brothers who play this game of hide and seek with their mom. That's all I will say. It was great. So overall it was a good collection, but the way I do these sort of anthologies or short story collections is I rate every single story and then I do an average. And this one averaged out to, I think, a 3.3. So I gave it a 3-star overall. So it was good. It was good. I have nothing else to say about it. So the next book that I read in January was probably my favorite read of the month, and that was Homecoming by Kate Morton. And this one is a historical fiction story about a woman named Jess who in the present day is living in England, but she grew up in Australia and she was raised pretty much by her grandmother. And she gets a call that her grandmother is not doing well and is in the hospital, so she goes back to Australia to take care of her. And while she's there, she uncovers some things about her family, and it sort of ties into this tragic event that happened back in the 50s. And so she's sort of putting the pieces together. There's a couple of mysteries throughout the story that you sort of uncover, and I think it's very typical of Kate Morton. Like, this is the type of story that when you go into a Kate Morton book, this is exactly what you're expecting. And it never disappoints me. I always really enjoy it. I love the way she plots her books and the way everything sort of ties together. There was one mystery in here that I figured out pretty early on, but then there were a few that I had that totally caught me by surprise. And I just think that this was a slow burn, and her books tend to be longer. This was like a 550-page book. But I think, again, it was very well plotted, very well written. I think it had great themes about family and about going home and what home is, you know. And yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this. I've read, I think, like 4 or 5 Kate Morton books, and this is probably in the top 2 or 3, I would say. So yeah, I enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read an anticipated book that was a 2023 release that I had been anticipating and I was patiently waiting for through my library to get, and that is Heartstopper Volume 5 by Alice Oseman. So this is obviously the 5th volume in a series about 2 boys, Nick and Charlie, and their love for each other. And this one I really liked because it tackled you know, you're seeing their relationship really evolve, and because at this point they've been together for a while, and so it starts to talk about, you know, things like sex and consent and all of that sort of thing. And I think that's a great topic to tackle, especially for the target audience of this series, you know, teenagers and stuff. I think it's very important for them to be open about sex and how they feel about it, and obviously consent is a big deal. So I think overall this was great. It had great themes. I love Nick and Charlie. They are the cutest. And I'm really sad that Volume 6, it has been confirmed, Volume 6 is going to be the last volume. I thought Volume 5 was going to be, but no. There's one more volume, and I'm sad about it because I've really enjoyed this series. I don't want it to end, but I understand it has to end. So this one I gave 4 stars. The next book I completed in January was one that I read on my Kindle, and that was The Overnight Guest by Heather Goodenkoff. And this one is a mystery suspense book, I would say. And there's kind of 3 different storylines going on at once in this book. And that was probably my favorite part about it, was trying to figure out how the 3 stories connected. But let's just say the main plot, the present day story, is about a woman named Wiley who is a true crime writer, and she goes to this farmhouse to work on her latest book. And in that farmhouse, a terrible crime occurred. I think it was like 20 years in the past. And then while she's there, this terrible snowstorm comes in and she's sort of snowed in, and she finds this little boy outside on the property and is trying to figure out who he is and how he got there and all of that. And then the other 2 plot lines I won't really go into because I didn't realize before I started reading the book that there were going to be multiple plot lines, and so that was kind of a nice surprise. And like I said, that was the really fun part about this book, was trying to connect all 3 of them. And so that's all I'm going to say about the story. And this was good. I liked all 3 plot lines, which is always a bonus when there are multiple plot lines going on. I liked all 3 of them. I liked how they all connected together in the end, because they do, obviously. And I think that the story overall was just very chilling, because stories like this, even though this is fiction, stories like this have happened in real life, and it's just very chilling to be reminded of that. And I thought it was just, yeah, it was written well. The only issue I had with the story, and the reason I docked it like a half star, was because, or maybe like 0.25 stars, I guess, was that when everything is, there's, you know, because there is sort of a big reveal at the end of the book, and in that reveal I wanted more of an explanation, and you didn't really get it. And I can't really say much more about that because obviously it would be spoilery, but for those of you that have read this book, I think you might know what I mean, that I just wanted more information about the big twist. I wanted more of the why to be answered. And so overall though, I enjoyed this a lot. This is my second Heather Goodenkoff book, and I enjoyed this one a lot more than the first one I read. And I'll definitely read more of her stuff, and I gave this one a 3.75. It would have been a 4-star if not for, like I said, that little issue I had with the ending. So, but overall, a really good mystery suspense book, and I really enjoyed it. And then I finished off the month by listening to the audiobook of Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield. This was one of my books for my Revisit Remix for 2024. And this one deals with I'm not exactly sure when the timeline is. I want to say it's set in like Victorian times possibly, but I'm not sure. In England on the River Thames, and it centers around this inn called the Swan, where everybody in this little town kind of come to hang out and tell stories and things like that. And storytelling is a huge aspect of their, you know, just their everyday life. And it's kind of like something that they do to sort of pass the time and entertain and all of that. And one day, this man comes into the Swan and he has this little girl with him who they think is dead. And he is also not doing well. And there's a, you know, they don't know who he is. They don't know who this little girl is. And they're trying to figure it out. And then the little girl turns out is actually alive. They could have sworn she was dead. She had no pulse, this and that. And then boom, she's alive. And so it has this sort of magical realism sort of quality to it. That sort of arc in the story, this little girl and where she came from and who she is and all this has this sort of magical quality to it. And so, and then the way the story is told, you know, it's called Once Upon a River, which anything I think that starts with once upon makes you think of fairy tales. And this book definitely had like a fairy tale quality to it, the way that the story was told, the chapters, the way they were sort of broken up. It had that magical quality and I liked it. It had a fantastical feeling to it and I liked it. The only thing was there were a lot of characters that you get introduced to, and there were times where I was confusing them. There are a lot of storylines throughout this too. You know, the main thread is this little girl, but then there's all these secondary characters and they all have a story, and keeping that stuff straight sometimes was a little tough. And then this also started out strong for me, and then it kind of got bogged down and started to feel a little long. This book is, I want to say it's like 450 pages, and yeah, it started to really feel like it. I don't know what the author could have done to shorten it. I think it was just me. I was just sort of getting a little bored. That's not to say that I wouldn't try this author again, because like I said, I think the way she told this story was really interesting. I liked the characters, though I did get them mixed up sometimes. I did like them. It just had this sort of cozy quality to it that I liked. But yeah, it did feel a little long, and at times I was a little bit confused, but overall this was good, and I gave it 3.5 stars. All right, so those were the books I read in January. Like I said, January was sort of a interesting month for me with starting school after not being in school for quite some time. It's been a long time since I have, you know, been in school of any kind. So it's been an adjustment for sure, but I'm slowly, you know, now I've been at it for what, four weeks or so, and I'm kind of starting to fall into a groove with homework and stuff. And it's going well. I'm really glad that I chose the program that I chose. I feel like it is really gonna prepare me for, you know, being a paralegal. I'm learning a lot of practical things, and the teachers are so knowledgeable and so great and so supportive. Like, they really want you to succeed, and they want you to go out there and succeed in your field, and it's just overall it's a great experience so far, and I hope that keeps on going. So yeah, that's pretty much been my month though. I've been very consumed by school, but I'm glad that I still managed to get some of my, you know, fun reading in, and hopefully it'll continue that way throughout 2024. So let me know down below what you read in January. I would love to know what your favorite book was. And I guess that's it. I hope you guys had a great month, and I hope February treats you well, and I will chat with you soon. Thank you so much for watching.